Hello, this is Marcellus of Marcellus King Media, and I'm here to give you a tip on how to easily set up the green screen on a Blackmagic Atem Pro, or Pro ISO, or just Atem Mini. So they all should be the same way. So let's get started. First of all, we got just a regular brick background. That's not really going to work. We need an actual green screen in order for this to work. Or maybe a blue screen. Either or. Technically, you can use it in any other color, but these are the two best colors to use, and most people just use a green screen. So let's get ours in place. All right, step one is done. Now, the next part is to tell the Atem controller how to block this out. Well, here's how we do it. So let's switch over to let me show you the controls first here on the controller. And these are the controls that I'm going to be using the most. So for one, here's your key control. This turns your green screen key on and off. I'm also going to be utilizing the still, which will load something into the media pool, and we'll also be utilizing the black as well. So to get started, let's first switch over to the computer screen and let's configure the green screen. So here within the Atem software control, we want to go over to palettes and then click on Chroma. Now, this camera right now that I'm on is camera 1, so we want to keep that as the same. But if your HDMI input, I say your green screen source, if it's on a different source, then you want to go ahead and switch it to that source here. Next, we want to sample the green. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Chroma Sample. And if you're using the Atem controller, and if you have your multi-view on, you are going to see, as you move this around, you're going to see like a little box on your preview screen. And that box is going to show you which area it is sampling. And I tend to move mine as large as possible without actually getting or hitting the subject itself, in which case right now would be me. So that's about as big as I can get it. And I want to make sure that I get the dark areas. And now that we have that sampled, now we want to make our adjustments. But before we do that, we need to see just how well the green screen is right now with just the sampling. So here's how I like to do it, and it makes it a little bit easier, is that on the Atem controller, I like to select this black right here, which gives me a nice, good background, solid background to work with, and to see just how much I'm bleeding through. Next, I want to go ahead and turn on the Chroma key. Now, as you can see, not really so great, but we're going to get around that. So let me switch back over to this screen. Let me turn my Chroma off here. Well, we can turn it back on. Well, no, let's turn it off. Just so I can show you these controls first, and then I'll turn it on so we can adjust it. So here we have the foreground, background, key edge, the spill, and then the flare suppression. These are the main ones that I'm going to be using in order to get this green screen to work correctly. So first, let me go ahead and switch it back over to the black, and let me turn the key back to on. And now the first thing I want to do as far as those sliders, I want to adjust the background. So as I bring that background up and I'm looking at my program monitor, it's looking pretty good, but I'm going to tweak that a little bit. So I'm going to bring the key edge in. I'm going to slide that up now. And now it's nice and black. And then I kind of want to look around, move my head, see if there's anything I need to adjust as far as the foreground setting. This is what happens when I slide it to the right. But what I like to do is I like to slide it to the right and then slide it back to the left until everything gets nice and black. So on this one, it's pretty much all the way to the left, so I really didn't have to mess with it at all. Now, the next part is going to be the spill and the suppression. Now, spill is what happens is that when you're really close to the screen and you're going to get light that reflects off of your green screen. Well, that light is going to come onto your shoulders, on the edges of your hair, things like that, especially if you're a fair or light-skinned individual, or if you're wearing something that really kind of picks up green. And you can kind of see a little bit on my shoulder there. So we want to kill that. And what we want to do is that we want to go to the spill. I'm going to show you that here on my screen. We want to go to the spill and we want to change that and bring that to the right, just to not too much, because let me show you what happens when you bring it all the way to the right. See, it kind of makes me a little bit purplish. You don't want to go Thanos. You never want to go full Thanos. So kind of bring that in a little bit, not too much. And then the flare suppression, I tend to make some adjustments on that. You see how it's kind of adjusting the color? All right. And I think that's good for like a good basic. I could probably bring that spill suppression up just a little bit, more. That kind of helps. But that's the basic of the green screen. But nobody really wants to be on a black background. No. So here's where the media pool comes into play if you're not overlaying it onto another HDMI source. Say, for example, you just want a nice beach scene or something that you've taken a picture of, or just a background of a virtual studio that you really like. So here's how you would get that loaded. So let's switch back over to the computer here, and let's turn off my green screen for the moment. So that way you guys can easily see. And we're going to click on the media tab down here. And as you can see, I have some files already loaded. And you want to make sure that you have these, when you create these files, when you export them from wherever you're exporting from or you're downloading, you want to make sure that they are the correct resolution, which is a 1920 by 1080. So, and you want to make sure that it has that correct aspect ratio. Otherwise, you're going to have some black bars on the left or right, and it kind of takes away from it. So here I have these loaded up, and I've also renamed my file names before doing so. And once they're loaded into here, the only thing you got to do is just drag them into these boxes, and it uploads to the Atem Mini. And then you want to come back to this tab, and you want to go over to the media player. Now, the media player on this down, when you click this down arrow, this is going to show all the media files that you've selected. So I'm going to select one from that I took at the Met Museum up in New York. And while I'm on the screen, I also want to demonstrate here this MP1. That is actually what loads your image into the Atem controller. Now, when you're looking at the Atem controller itself, that's going to pertain to the still button here. So the MP1 on the screen, and I'm sorry, I just hit that. The MP1 button on the screen, and then the still button on the Atem controller is what actually turns that on. So of course, as you just saw, we'll turn that on. So now we're switched to that still input, and it's loaded. And now we want to go ahead and load our chroma key. So we want to go, again, let's go back. We want to turn this chroma key on. So let's turn our still back on, and let's turn our chroma key on, and there we go, it is loaded. Now, what I like to do at this point is I like to look at my monitor, which is off to my right here, and I want to basically see if it looks okay when I do it on the black, but sometimes you might need to make further adjustments. And this is where the color adjustments down below will come into play. So you might want to make those adjustments. You see I got a little bit of green there, so you'll have to tweak that. For the sake of time, I won't do that for the moment, but which buttons at this point will handle that. So our next step, and this is for you guys who may be doing training videos to where you may not be in the entire screen, or you're playing a game, you're doing some video game streaming, and therefore you want your chroma key to be in one of the corners. Let me show you how to make that change as well. So while we're here, let's turn our chroma key off for a moment so you guys can see everything that's going on. We want to go back over to palettes, and we want to go we're going to stay on the chroma tab, but we want to scroll down, and we want to turn on what's called the flying key. Now, when I turn this on, some of my settings may appear automatically. I mean, the settings that I had in there before, since I haven't power cycled this, it may automatically put me on the right spot where I was before, but I'll show you how it works once it does. That way you know how to make adjustments when you're turning yours on. So I want to turn on my flying key, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn my chroma key on. Now, here's a tip. Say, for example, if you don't want to really control if you don't really feel like controlling the Atem controller physically, you can also turn the key on here via this button. So you want to hit that key, and then you want to tell it to go on air. So at that point, you're now on air. And here you can see that I am in the upper left-hand corner, which is good because I want to be in the lower right-hand corner. So first, we want to make some adjustments to the X position, which is the horizontal. And I tend to smooth this left and right just to kind of get my orientation. So I'm going to move this to the right. All right. And then our Y coordinate, of course, is going to be our up and down. So I want to move that to the left and right. In this case, looks like I'll be moving left to go down. And I'm going to go right there. Now, I'm not going to bring it all the way down just yet, because what I want to do is show you two more things here. First, how to change the size. So that's pretty self-explanatory. You can make it as big or as small as you want. And those are also linked, but if you wanted to do those individually, you can. But you notice these little black bars I have at the top and the bottom? I want to get rid of those. Here's how you do that. So you want to turn on this mask option here, and this allows you to trim the top and bottom. Now, as you can see, this one did take my settings that I did have last time. But I'm going to move that to the right, just to kind of give you a little bit of demonstration. See the little black bar there? So when I move that to the left, that trims that right off. And the same thing for the bottom, left and right. So you can move those values, just to kind of get rid of any black bars or, any extra space around you that you might want to get rid of. And then I'll further tweak that I'll move that down just a little bit. So I'm at the very bottom of the screen, so I don't have like a little bit of a gap. And now, say for example, if I was playing a video game or doing streaming or doing a training video where I don't need to be the dominant thing on the screen, that's all I have to do. So that, in a nutshell, is how to do green screen on the Atem controller. If there's any questions, feel free, post them in the comments, and I'll answer those as quickly as I can, and hopefully as easily as I can as well. So I know when you first get your Atem controller, it can be a little bit complicated, but once you kind of dig around in the user interface and kind of look at a few things and play with it, you'll get the hang of it in no time. So please subscribe. Look forward to much more content coming now that we have a Blackmagic Atem controller. I do intend to do quite a few more tutorial videos surrounding this wonderful, absolute glorious piece of hardware. So I'm very excited, and I hope you are too. Again, please subscribe. This is Marcellus of Marcellus King Media. You have a good day.